Hello and welcome back to the Loyal Sons Show. That's at the Loyal Sons, wherever you find your social medias. Follow us here and follow us there for Pitt sports content you will not want to miss. If you love sharks and hate Vegas, ESPN analytics, and the ACC network, and any other forces of evil hell-bent on diminishing the success of this program, this is the place for you. The Loyal Sons Show, a safe, sunshiny place for your Pitt Athletics fix. I am joined as always by Squid and Dylan, my co-hosts. I am David, and Pitt kind of just took care of business a couple days ago.
Still haven't lost. For those keeping track at home.
Pitt's going to enter the month of November undefeated in football. So just let that sink in for a few minutes. Obviously, we're recording this on October 28th, Monday, a few days removed from the Thursday night just thrashing of the Syracuse Orange. But I don't know, a few days removed, and I feel like since we didn't record over the weekend, obviously we had a lot going on. We had a good friend's wedding. Shout out to T-Ray, big dog.
Son of Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah. Shout out to him. But I think we didn't really get to appreciate like a 6-0 Pitt team. We got to go out and watch them just kick the hell out of Syracuse. And we had something that we've been hoping for all year, I think, and just a really easy, clean, no-doubter win. And I don't think we've been able to appreciate that enough yet.
No, we haven't. Because usually the thing that happens whenever Pitt goes up like 14-0 or even like 21-3, the theme is everyone goes, uh-oh, there's still a lot of time left. Anything can happen. And then before you know it, the other team scores and it's still like 21-10, but everyone's like super worried, like way more worried than they should be. But this game got out of hand so fast, there was no time to even like pretend to worry. It was just constant touchdowns and pick sixes, and we were just every 5 minutes just hugging each other and jumping up and down.
It was a really big game for feeling good feelings and hugging your buddies. And like I know there's only so much we can add to the conversation because at the time of recording it, it's Monday, but I still think we'd be remiss if we didn't just talk about all the things that make us feel good, because Dylan, you hit the nail on the head. How often does a ranked 6-0 Pitt team just absolutely lay waste to a very competent opponent? We deserve to talk about it. And you know what? If you, the listener, are tired of hearing some of these same points, you are not the Pitt fans we thought you were. Because I could listen to people talk about that linebacking core's performance from Thursday on repeat until the day I die.
You know what that game reminded me of? I just put this together now. It reminded me of the Wake Forest game if you cut out the first quarter. It was just utter domination, and the other team's quarterback was seeing ghosts, and we were having the time of our lives.
Yeah, I will admit, I think there was like 2.5 minutes left, and I look up at the scoreboard, and Syracuse was about to. Well, they were knocking on the door. I don't think they even ended up scoring that possession. I had to do the math in my head real quick. I was like, okay, it's a 4-score game. They can't win. Like, I'm not even going to let myself talk myself into this absolute nightmare scenario. And then I brought myself back down to earth. But
How often are Pitt fans leaving early because Pitt is winning by so much and the game is over? And it's not Youngstown State or Delaware or New Hampshire. It's another ACC team.
The entire student section was in Tequila Cowboy by the end of the third quarter. And I can't really blame them. What else did they have to gain by staying there the rest of the game? It was over.
Well, they were home studying. It was a school night, David. It was a Thursday. Let's not forget that.
Thursdays are not school nights. They aren't.
Class.
They're just a pregame for the weekend. Yeah, it was another scenario, another situation where a Narduzzi defense just absolutely broke the opposing quarterback. And I don't know what it was. It was they must have seen something on film very early that they knew they could exploit with Kyle McCord because, I mean, from the opening jump, it was that first possession. Rasheem Biles jumped that little out route, that flat route, and took it for 6. It seemed like, and we talked about this as in the sportsbook last week, but they made a very concerted effort to like send extra guys and blitz McCord and make him uncomfortable. It was apparent from the first snap. And I think that might just kind of be what this Pitt team is now. Like they know they have freakishly athletic linebackers. Let those guys fly around. Let Kyle Lewis fly around. Rasheem Biles, Braylon Lovelace. Let them just wreak havoc. And maybe you give up some big plays. I mean, they really didn't give up many to Syracuse, but maybe that's just the risk you take at this point with this team. Take what you got and make other teams make mistakes.
You could tell by it was the third pick 6. Whenever McCord was trying to throw that screen pass, he was backpedaling, had 2 guys in his face, and was just like, "Fuck it, I need to get rid of this ball." And bad things happen when quarterbacks think that way, and that was very early in the game that he was broken.
I'm just cracking up at starting a sentence with, "Yeah, by the third pick 6." And what's even crazier is it happened in like the first 28 minutes of the game.
Yeah. And also, not a pick 6, but Brandon George also just had the number 2 play on SportsCenter with his interception. So, all in the first half of football. Just a absolute masterclass by Ryan Manilax, boys.
I was really worried that the takeaway from this game would be, wow, Kyle McCord sucks. Yeah, probably. But like as I scrolled through Twitter, all like the national accounts, just all of general college football Twitter was really piling on Kyle McCord, and deservedly so. He threw 5 picks in a primetime game, 3 of them returned for touchdowns. You get what you pay for. But I was really worried that the real story would be buried, and that is that Pitt has the best linebacking core in the country. And I'm just in a Pitt echo chamber at this point, but I've seen a lot of good Shark stuff as of recent. And I mean, if that wasn't a coming out party, I don't know what is. That entire linebacking core, 4 to 6 deep, just played unbelievable. And we trashed a 5-1 team. This was a good team we beat. This was a team that has passed all over everybody they've played. And not, Kyle McCord has over 300 passing yards every single game this year. And this was the first one he only reached 300 passing yards because he had the ball for 42 minutes and threw it 62 times. All the other times were because he would drop back and he'd have a bunch of time and a guy would get open and he'd throw a great pass. And then he'd do that like 20 or 40 times.
We kind of said it. I don't want to say we predicted that the defense would become really good, but around the time of the UNC game, we were hoping the defense would flip a switch and start getting better and better because it's a new unit. There's some new guys in some key places, and eventually they'll put it all together. They have. But even before that, I think we saw glimpses of how good the linebackers were early on. We're like, okay, well, Kyle Lewis is amazing. Brandon George is Brandon George, all reliable. Rasheem Biles is all over the place too. So we knew that. And now the guys around him are stepping up too. So hopefully at this point, everyone else is on notice that Pitt has some dudes. And I think we can safely say the defense can also win us games because
they've done it twice.
Need to continue to do that.
It would be really cool if that's just what this defense was now. Like, just really fast, disruptive, pretty dominant at times. Shit, all the time in the last 2 games.
Honestly, I don't want to be mush, but it just might be. Like, that might be who the defense is now. Because if you go back to the start of that second half against UNC, which I believe was 4 months ago, only about 2 or 3 games ago, but exactly 4 months ago, they've just been suffocating.
What jumped out to me most about how legit this defense was the types of plays they were making right off the jump. How often do we see Pitt's like safeties or linebackers jump those out routes? Literally never. I feel like I can count the amount of times it's happened in Narduzzi's tenure, like 5, like on one hand. And Rasheem Biles took it to the house. And then there were plays where Rylan Gandy would be in like tight coverage. He wouldn't interfere or hold. He'd turn his head and he'd swat the ball away. I think Rashad Battle did that on like the first play of the game as well. So these guys are just making plays. Like, this is almost unprecedented stuff for Narduzzi defenses, even from the ones that were really good.
Yeah, and I mean,
go ahead, David.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I just feel like we've gone entirely too far into this episode without bringing up Kyle Lewis. I mean, I think we mentioned that he had a pick 6, but like his pick 6 was, one of our buddies said this, like rewatching the game, it was like Kyle Lewis decided before that play, I'm the best athlete in this stadium. He intercepts the ball, gets the ball, makes a man miss, gets dragged in the end zone, literally gets his jersey ripped off his back. And then the Pitt social media team put out a video with many men playing in the background. Kyle Lewis just jawing at the Syracuse sideline with his jersey hanging off of his back. And it was in that moment when I watched that for the first time of about 250 times that I decided that Kyle Lewis is firmly cemented himself as one of my favorite Pitt players of all time. And he's quickly rising up the ranks. He is a bona fide superstar. That's all there is to it.
I know. On that return, he made a couple guys look really stupid. And he broke a dude's ankles. Lineman dived at his legs and missed. McCord, God help his soul, he didn't stand a chance. But I thought about it. I was like, hey, maybe we got to put Kyle Lewis on offense for a few plays. Put him in at running back. See what happens. Like, we used to give Jordan Whitehead those tosses that one year, and he would make it around the end and was too fast and strong to be tackled. I feel like Kyle Lewis could do that too.
Kyle Lewis and Rasheem Biles can do anything. I've no hesitation saying that Pitt has the best linebacking core in the country. And maybe we didn't give Kyle Lewis his flowers, same reason we didn't give Rasheem Biles his flowers, because it's such a group effort with them. I mean, Brandon George, who is on his 6th year, and I think deep down, a lot of us thought was a liability when we've watched him in the past, has just been the absolute heartbeat of that defense as a leader, as a guy setting the middle. And then, that's before we even start tapping into the rotational guys who all contributed in the game on Thursday. So what an embarrassment of riches we have at that position. And if we're going to keep talking about the defense, which I don't know how much we can say about the offense last week, the secondary also looked very good. We might have jumped the shark, no pun intended, on Rashad Battle, because he's just looked incredibly solid the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I think we just mushed him into being good. Like, we came on here and just bashed him for a few weeks straight, saying that he couldn't play, and then has just been unbelievably, like you said, I think solid's the best way to put it. Really haven't been able to pick on him since that Cincinnati game. It's like, I think once a week we're turning to each other and just be like, wow, Rashad Battle just made a really nice play. So that's another guy, kind of like in the same lane as Brandon George, a guy who's been here a while and maybe thought he would get overtaken by a younger guy, but that's just a veteran guy who's been in the system for 5 years at this point, I think. And he's just one of those guys he's stepping up and making plays and really contributing. And it's like those are the type of steps that you need those, for lack of a better term, role players to take to have the kind of start they've had this year.
And we haven't even brought up the defensive line yet, who in the last 2 weeks has just sort of quietly figured it out. We have 10 sacks in the last 2 games, if you guys weren't keeping track.
That's better.
Not bad.
Yeah, no complaints.
Now that we've praised the defense up and down.
Can I praise the defense one more time? Just really quickly.
Okay, go for it.
The Pitt defense on Thursday ended with 4 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, 8 passes defensed, 3 touchdowns, and 5 picks. That is mind-boggling. Every single one of those numbers alone would make me say, like, wow, what a defensive effort. But to hit all of those marks in one game against one of the most explosive offenses in a very offensively explosive conference is just, I don't know what to say.
Defense played their asses off. Absolutely. For the second straight game, won them the ball game. Cal game, it was more of a hold this thing together. Syracuse game, it was we're just going to blow this thing open early. So, yeah, like we said earlier, it would be very cool if this is just who the Pitt defense is now. And it might be very necessary if the Pitt offense isn't quite who we thought they were. Now, I don't want to open up this conversation bashing the offense because I do think there's been a little bit of unfair, like, worry or like, oh, sound the alarms because we just beat a 5-1 conference opponent by 28 points. Like, it feels like it could be a little bit of nitpicking here. Do we think there's any chance that the offense is starting to get figured out a little bit? Or could this be the beginning of a trend with the offense, or am I just nitpicking and there's nothing we can take from Thursday night?
I am much more on the side of the latter. I understand that there were moments where it felt like, all right, what are we doing here? Just like call a logical play, make a logical throw to an open guy, do something, move the ball. But keep in mind that there were like 3 different points at that game where between one Pitt possession and another, you could have left the stadium, walked to the strip district, got a Pittsburgher from the original Permanis, sat and eaten it, side of fries and all, walked back to the stadium, talked your way past security to let you back in, and taken your seats before Pitt got another offensive possession. I mean, they had the ball for 18 minutes, and it felt like days passed between multiple of their possessions. It's really hard to get into and stay into a rhythm when you do not get the ball and for great reason. I mean, if you're just returning interception after interception for touchdowns and you don't need any offense, not a bad thing. But, if you're isolating it and just looking at Eli's performance or just looking at Cade Bell or Des Reed's performances, it looks underwhelming. And again, that is what happens when you can't get into a rhythm and literally nothing is needed of you. Our defense outscored Syracuse significantly. Well, not significantly, 21-13, but still, it's pretty wild.
If you have 3 pick sixes in one half, I don't know how an offense is supposed to get in a rhythm. They're standing on the sideline ready to go, and then it's like, oh, never mind. So the first half, we'll chalk it up to that, and then the second half, Syracuse, what did they start out with? We had a 9.5-minute drive to start the second half. So they're sitting at halftime and then even longer. You're on the field, and at that point, it's already 31-6. So, like, what is your game plan even to do? Like, yes, the objective is to always score points, but if you're up by that much, you're probably taking your foot off the pedal at least a little bit, even if you're Cade Bell. So the offense did enough good things for me to not really care. Like, the couple touchdown drives they had were nice. Holstein had 2 nice touchdown passes. I think people had a weird taste in their mouth because Holstein had a couple of like very questionable misses that were just way off. He had that one pass that was nearly intercepted, probably should have been intercepted. And then there was a roughing the passer interception that came back.
Right.
So it didn't look the best. We didn't see him make a whole lot of plays, but if you look at it at the end of the day, what was he? 11 for 15, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns. Played very fine.
Okay. I think we're all in agreement then. I had to bring it up because I do think there were some conversations about, the offense isn't quite getting it done. But yeah, I think I feel the same way. Didn't have the ball, didn't need to score quick. So you can be fairly conservative. I know that's not really in Cade Bell's vocabulary, but I'm sure Narduzzi was like, hey, 31-0 at halftime. I think we can take this one to the finish line. I would say one concern I feel like I do have about the offense is something we've mentioned a couple times about the run game. It seems pretty clear that they have not a ton of interest in establishing a real run game. Like, every run feels like it's just setting up a pass play through like an RPO style. Running between the tackles with Des Reed becoming very apparent, not super productive. So those are a couple items that I haven't loved seeing, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know, we can kind of keep this one close to the vest. We're up 31-0. Our defense is terrorizing the opposing quarterback. I don't want to sound the alarms. It's just now we've gone a handful of weeks since seeing Eli really light it up, which is right. What we had come to expect.
Yeah, it is back-to-back weeks where we got the ball first and just went 3 and out and did absolutely nothing. So how about Saturday night, Cade Bell reach deep into your bag and give us like a 9-play touchdown drive to really set the tone. Shut us all up.
Yeah, you guys made a lot of good points, but may I also counter with one, and that is that we won a game 41-13 and Desmond Reed only had to touch the ball 11 times.
I'll take it.
Didn't he limp off the field on like the second play of the game?
Yeah, but at this point, when I see that,
to be expected.
At this point, when I see Desmond Reed limping, I think I mentally disregard it. Like, just didn't happen.
Yeah.
Speaking of injuries, we're all good with Eli, right? He's fine.
I think our boots on the ground told us that he was at the volleyball match.
He was
the day after the game.
And he was courtside in the packed Pete, so loud environment. They hit the volleyball pretty hard down there, so you don't want to get hit in the head with a stray ball there. So I would presume if you have concussion, you wouldn't be advised to sit courtside at a volleyball match.
Any sunglasses, Swid? Is he wearing sunglasses?
No sunglasses. He had a large soft drink and some food, so he was just living life, enjoying being the quarterback of an undefeated football team.
If there was any concern he had a concussion, he'd be going to a loud-ass gym the day after over Narduzzi's dead body. So I am not concerned about Holstein. We've also had enough little birds say, like, yeah, there really doesn't seem to be a lot of worry in that building. So I'm feeling pretty good about this one. Maybe the hit probably didn't concuss him, but maybe at the very least it it gave him a little shake, and it will reactivate the part of his brain that says, "Oh, if I should hit this wide open guy on an 8-yard crosser instead of launching it 40 yards downfield every play."
Maybe.
Who knows?
I think Narduzzi did mention in his media availability today that they're taking it one day at a time, getting Nate Yarnell some first team reps. And to an outsider, that may have been like this could be kind of bad for Pitt. Is that why the Vegas line is where it's at? For me, a loyal son and loyal follower of Narduzzi who never doubted him, this just jumped out the page to me, or jumped off the page, and I was like, oh, this is Narduzzi gamesmanship. Like, he wants Rhett Lashley to prepare for both quarterbacks, watch film on both quarterbacks, and leave them guessing up until kickoff, until Eli ultimately trots out there.
Well, he did this earlier in the year with Rodney Hammond. He's like, oh, yeah, Rodney, he's been practicing for a week. We found out a few days ago. He'll be ready to go for UNC. And then come Monday, after Hammond played like 3 snaps, whatever it was, he told the media, yep, I lied. I found out he was cleared like 48 hours. He only practiced once, and he was clearly not ready for game action. So, gotcha, Mac Brown.
Look, if you're going into an away game against a ranked opponent and you're inexplicable 7.5-point underdogs, you're going to take what you can get, and that includes making the SMU coaching staff dig into Western Michigan 2022 just in case.
Well, he played last year and looked pretty darn good, David.
Spend a couple hours on Duke from week 12 last year, you know? It's just good gamesmanship. But I'm tired of thinking about potential injury or sullying what was otherwise just the most incredible Pitt game to watch in like a full 2 years. I'm starting to think some things. I'm not going to say any things. But I'm curious, and I want to pick your guys' brain on something. We've seen Pitt be, or at least Pitt field, one of the best offenses in the country for a month. We've seen Pitt field maybe one of the best defenses in the country for a month. My question to you, and if you need to pull up the AP Top 25,
No, I'm boycotting that.
Fair enough. FPI, if you want to pull up a list of the best teams in the country, please take a moment to do so, because I'm curious if Pitt's offense in September and their defense in October played in the same game, who is the best team in the country you feel confident we could beat? Because I'm kind of at the point now where I'm begging them to get on the same page, because that team would be absolutely diabolical.
So, offense from stretch from mid third quarter Cincinnati through UNC, and then defense from Cal and Syracuse.
More or less, yeah.
Okay. Who could they beat? I mean, if both of those units are absolutely clicking on the same day, see, now you got me thinking too. I mean, any given Saturday, right? Especially if you've got 2 units playing at that level.
My intention is not to get anyone ahead of themselves. The point of this exercise, and I would like specific answers as you guys pull up the top 25, is that this team has a ceiling that I think is so much higher than anyone nationally expects. And if they can continue to win games and put it all together, I think kind of the sky might be the limit. Now the floor is low for if you just look at the inverse.
Right.
It's possible.
The defense from the first half, the offense from the second, but like this is as open a season of college football as we've seen in forever. And Pitt has shown some unbelievable highs. All I'm saying.
So I'll tell you right now, I don't think they could beat really tough. I mean, this team looked really good all year. They're ranked number 8. That's Notre Dame. They deserve to be even higher. I don't know why they're not number 2. They have
they
any
only
bad
have one
losses,
loss.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's
Notre
to like
Dame, so
Oregon or
played a tough
Georgia,
schedule.
right?
Yeah. I remember when college football used to stand for something, and if you lost to Northern Illinois, your season was just fucked forever, no matter what happened.
So, for those listening at home, Squid, you were being ironic, correct? You think that Pitt performing at its highest function could, in fact, beat the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame?
I mean, yeah. I ain't worried about Riley Leonard. He ran away from the ACC. He's scared.
Think Kyle Lewis and Rasheem Biles could wreak some havoc on Nico down in Tennessee. I think he's had some games where I'm like, oh, he's still pretty young and figuring things out.
I mean, are there any quarterbacks that look like actually really, really solid at all times this year? Like, I'm even looking at like Cam Ward's a Heisman finalist.
Cam Ward,
like, objectively extremely good, but he's made some bad mistakes. He's almost lost him a couple games, so I don't think anything is off the table. Dylan Gabriel in Oregon, they might just be like a machine. It would take like the best case scenario, but I'm not going to start thinking that hard about those sort of things. All I know is Vegas would have us like 35-point underdogs because that's just how it goes.
I like this team performing at the highest level against Miami, especially given their willingness to slip up and let games stay close a little bit later than they should. So right there, we talked about the 8, 7, and 5th ranked teams in the country. Pitt fans, this is not an invitation to get ahead of yourself and start looking past SMU, but good Lord, man, there's some potential here.
Yeah, they'd also shit on that rosy-cheeked douche Drew Allar, Penn State. But what's the next topic? We can just move on to that now and leave that there.
Well, you beat any of one of those teams here in a semifinal. Okay, moving on.
I think our next topic of conversation was, I said I'm boycotting the AP poll. And fellas, we've made it. We made it this far in the season. Give yourselves a pat on the back. This is the last time we have to pay any attention to the AP poll. Clap it up.
Thank God. I wish it was a week earlier.
This is the glorious week in which the college football playoff poll comes in and saves us from having to hunt down random members of the media who are ranking Pitt too low on Twitter, shooting them DMs, threatening them with Kyle Lewis videos. This is the last weekend we have to do that because the college football playoff pool will come in and clean some of these things up. They don't have the preconceived notions where you just leave a 6-2 Missouri team who's gotten spanked twice in the top 25. You don't have to, well, I'm not going to start saying that because they probably still will rank Notre Dame higher than they should be. But you get the point. They do some correcting, and you don't have to worry about the AP poll anymore. But Pitt is ranked number 18 in the AP poll, only moved up a spot after just absolutely throttling a 5-1 conference opponent. I don't know. Did we expect much else? This is kind of what we've come to expect at this point. But our friend Chris Peak over at Panther Lair did the diligence on finding this stat for us. Tied for the lowest ranked 7-0 power conference team of this century, of this millennium, since 2000. So we aren't all just crazy here. That like, I think before I saw that, I was like, oh, surely like that happens fairly often with no. This is almost unprecedented levels of disrespect in the polls right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is simply a top 15 team in the country, and I shudder to think how things would be going down in a non-playoff year if they just had to ride out with like BCS or back when, you know, if a team landed in the top 5 of the AP, they could just declare themselves national champions, because there'd be no force analyzing this from a unbiased perspective and making decisions on that basis. Also, we're giving the College Football Playoff Committee a lot of credit. And I for those of you that are listening very skeptically, I'd like to draw a line between their ability to remove preseason bias from their process and say, okay, we wouldn't still be talking about Ole Miss, Missouri, Illinois if it wasn't for an early season conception that they were very good that has since realistically dissipated, and the committee's ability to find a way to backdoor 9-3 LSU into the playoff later in the season because it's good for viewership and money. And, well, they look strong enough in their last 3 games and play in the SEC, so we can justify it. There's a very big difference between the justice we think they could serve for Pitt and the injustice they are certain to perform after conference championships.
Yeah, in the long run, I'm still not sold on what could happen. It could still be pretty fucked up what goes down, but for the short term, it's a good reset because you said the AP poll. It's like, well, we had Missouri at like what were they top 10?
Yeah, I think they came in at 9.
Yeah, they were right around 10. So it's like, oh, we can't move them all the way down. We don't want to put this team that isn't a brand up in the top 25 yet. With the committee, they'll look back and be like, well, Pitt, they don't have the toughest schedule, but they beat these teams. And, well, actually, that win that we thought this team had that was good earlier actually sucks because like they beat Florida State, and Florida State actually sucks now. Like, it's a reset. You look at the resumes where they're at now, and in the AP poll, people don't do that. They just look at it week to week like, oh, they lost. You're going to go down 1 spot. Oh, you won. Yeah, you're up 2. And they don't look at the big picture like, oh, over the course of the season, this team is literally just undefeated, and this team has lost twice. And I'm not going to retrain my brain to think that way because they can't ever be wrong, and they know all, and their rankings are right. And I hate them. But I don't care because Pitt just has to win and the real rankings come in. So I'm going to stop right there before I get my heart beating all fast.
But also knowing that the first college football playoff rankings are coming out at like within minutes of the polls closing on the East Coast for the 2024 election, they know they can get away with some shit this year. And people are going to be a little distracted. I'm talking sneaking LSU and Alabama in the top 12 and giving them an inside course at the playoff, knowing that people are going to be too busy screaming at each other on Twitter to notice.
I will be protesting the football polls. There might be some other protests happening after some decisions are made, but I'm not concerned about that. I'm worried about where our Panthers fall.
Yeah.
Anyone want to join me?
Where does the CFP committee meet? Because we could storm that.
Yeah.
Nashville. The Big Ten and SEC commissioners.
They're all in cahoots.
Mm.
Well, all right. We've done enough bitching about rankings, but I'm not done bitching yet. Because SMU is ranked number 20 in the country. So this is a top 20 matchup come this Saturday between us and the Mustangs before we go to preview them with our sportsbook. How often do top 20 matchups just get relegated to ACC Network? I'd like to go back and find some stats on that, because when that was announced, I was actually like floored. Like, I thought maybe I didn't think it would be a noon game because time zones. I think that would be what, 11 a.m. local kick, 10 a.m. local kick, 11 a.m. Dallas, whatever that is, an hour behind. But I mean, I thought maybe we could get a 3:30 ESPN2, something. 8 p.m. on the ACC network.
We can say the same thing for this that we said about rankings. Branding is too important in modern college football, and accounts for way too much of our perception of teams. So whether or not they are good, or whether or not they are worth a primetime spot on a major network, it all comes down to branding. So, as excited as we are that Pitt's 7-0, please be cautious, Pitt fans. Know that we have to go undefeated to do the thing. Like, please make no mistake. We are not going to have any favors done for us because of who we are. And that includes getting goddamn game day or even on ESPN2.
Hey, if we win this one, maybe they'll put us on True TV next week. Right after Impractical Jokers and before Impractical Jokers.
For years, the loyal Sons, we saw the sprinklings of the anti-ACC bias, and we're called brainwashed, biased,
quote unquote brainwashed.
Yeah, whatever term you want to use there, we were called it. It's becoming more and more clear that it exists, and I'm just saying, harder to deny it.
All right. You guys ready to preview SMU?
Pony up.
Well, it's time to preview Pitt's top 20 matchup against SMU, the Pony Express, this Saturday at 8 p.m. in Dallas on the ACC network. Early thoughts on this SMU team, fellas. Right now, they're 7-1. One loss to BYU early in the season, a BYU team who has not lost the game. Went to overtime with Duke this past Saturday. Looked like they might drop a game, but they ultimately pulled it out. So how do we feel? How do we feel going into this game? I know we'll get to it ultimately in the sports book, but Pitt's early dogs in this one, according to Vegas, 7.5-point underdogs as we sit here and record right now.
It's been up and down. I remember week 0, they played Nevada and they were losing and just looked like the village idiots for a while. And we were calling them a disgrace to the ACC, and they were tarnishing our good name. We should have never let them in. And then they beat Houston Christian and then lost to BYU. But ever since then, they've looked kind of scary. And I'm glad they had a weird game against Duke before us. So maybe they're out of whack and will leave a weird taste in their mouth after having to go through all that last week. So I don't know what to expect. Is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, just by box score watching, it's kind of hard to get a gauge on what the fuck this football team is. Even with the added context that, like, okay, after BYU, they made the quarterback switch and started clicking. Well, they scored 1 million points and gave up 1 million points against TCU. Then they murdered Florida State. But we have since found that doesn't really mean jack shit. Then they beat Louisville by a touchdown. Well, Louisville was ranked at the time, so that probably looked sick, but now we kind of know that Louisville's not all that great. Beat the hell out of Stanford, something Syracuse couldn't do. And then whatever the hell that was against Duke late on Saturday night.
Yeah, we were at the Sportsbook. And
yeah,
David walks up and says, well, Duke just lost, or SMU just lost to Duke. And I was like, really, what happened? You're like, well, they didn't lose yet, but Duke's at the 15-yard line with a minute left. And from across the way, we see what we think was a blocked kick. And yeah, they pulled it off. But at that time, I did not realize they turned the ball over 6 times. So I don't know if I'm impressed they managed to win despite that much adversity, or if turning the ball over 6 times makes you kind of incompetent in a way.
Yeah, so they turned the ball over 6 times, but I believe Duke's got 0 points out of those 6 turnovers.
Exactly 0. Yep.
That is unthinkable. And if you're trying to do the math at home, the 2 turnovers that Pitt forced against Syracuse that weren't themselves returned for touchdowns resulted in 2 scoring drives for Pitt, a field goal and a touchdown, 10 total points. So that is certainly something that SMU cannot afford to do to a much better offense, I think, than Duke has.
Yeah, and just looking at what SMU has on their offense side of the ball, RJ Maryland, their stud tight end, is actually out for the season. I know he didn't play this past week either, but he's still their leading receiver in terms of receiving yards. He'll be out. I know that they have Brashard Smith at running back. He's averaging about 6.5 yards a carry, 9 touchdowns on the season. And then obviously they decided to go with Kevin Jennings, who sophomore from Texas, almost 1,600 yards passing, a little over 300 on the ground. So a little bit of a dual threat there, but Duke got after him. Similarly, the way Pitt's defense likes to send the linebackers, I think Duke kind of ramped up the pressure on him, got him to throw 3 picks on Saturday. So wouldn't be surprised if Narduzzi goes back to his bag, sends some exotic blitzes and tries to hit Jennings early and often like they did with McCord. So
yeah, he's definitely a talented guy. Has only thrown for over 300 yards in one game, has also run for over 100 in a game. So take whatever you think about Pitt playing dual threat quarterbacks, factor in the uniqueness of this year's Pitt defensive unit, and I think therein will lie, your perception of how this game will go. For bad or for better.
I think the more we talk through this, the more, I don't know, are we all in agreement? We have no clue how this game's going to play out Saturday.
SMU rattles off a lot of big plays. It's how they scored a couple of their touchdowns against Duke. It was just chucking it deep and getting a touchdown all at once. And I think Pitt's been pretty good lately at containing that, but I'm not going to say it won't happen.
You're going to say Narduzzi's defense is not immune to giving up big pass plays?
I'm not going to say that it won't happen.
All right. Well, without further ado, let's get to the sportsbook. Actually, before we go sportsbook, I did want to ask you guys, this is what do you think? This is Pitt's biggest regular season game since blank. Obviously, the backyard brawl has its own implications. In every game, when you hit this point of undefeated, the next game is always the biggest game. But I mean, really, implications-wise, these are two teams who are undefeated in the ACC, two teams ranked in the top 20 who realistically keep winning, have an inside track at a shot at the college football playoff. I mean, implications-wise, weight of the matchup, like, when was the last time Pitt played this big of a game in the regular season?
I see a lot of similarities to the Clemson game you're talking about, mainly because it was a moment of the season. It was later in the year. And if Pitt pulled off the win, it would be like, okay, this team is like confirmed legit. Some people might think we should already be there right now, but if we do it this week, there's no doubt. Back in that Kenny Pickett season, it was like, well, Pitt looks pretty good, but can they get by Clemson? And after that, well, I guess we lost the next week. But still, getting by like your biggest test to that date is a huge hump to hurdle.
Right. Yeah, and it felt like that was the game where we thought they were pretty good, but it was like this is the game that we'll figure out if they're the real deal. Also, 2021, that UVA game, obviously, I don't believe UVA was ranked at that point in time, but that was the clinch the Coastal, and that we needed no help whatsoever after that to get into the ACC championship with a win there. Obviously, we know how that game played out. The Jordan Addison game just played outside of his mind. That one. So yeah, I'd have to say one of those two. Unfortunately, I mean, this is the awesome thing about being undefeated this late into the season. These games all really matter, and something we've missed the last 2 years because Pitt lost early enough. Well, 2023, none of those games were very important. 2022, they lost enough games early to where these games didn't hold as much weight later in the season.
I'm having a hard time answering this question, honestly, because I think this game fits more criteria for a quote-unquote big game. And as I hold up other games that we've highly anticipated, they don't hold a candle. I mean, you had a ranked Pitt versus ranked Tennessee, but that was really early in the season. Didn't really know what either team was. No conference implications. To have all of those things where we know who both of these teams are. They are both ranked. This has serious conference title implications. I just don't think between now and that Cincinnati game, that Cincinnati game, we aren't going to find a lot of answers.
Well, the other side of the coin is similar to that Clemson game. If you lose that game, no matter what you do after, you're going to be discredited. You had a good season, but you lost to the best team you faced to date, and you just get knocked out a bunch of pegs. More than you should, because that's when the media can really discredit you and say, yep, we knew all along you weren't that good and you lost to the first, quote, real test. So if we win, hopefully there's a big jump, and if we lose, I would not be surprised if they drop us out of the top 25 just because that's how it's looked all season. Got to scratch and claw for any bit of respect.
They're just licking their chops at being able to drop an ACC team from the rankings based on the results of this game. All right, it's sportsbook time. The Loyal Sons Sportsbook, where we give you lines to preview the upcoming Pitt matchup. Loyal Sons Sportsbook, can't get these lines anywhere else except for the ones that you can. Quick reminder, student athletes, please do not participate in the sportsbook. Can lead to indefinite suspensions that can be lifted at a later time. Okay, kick it off. Story of last Pitt game was turnovers forced by that defense. Big story for SMU in their last game was turnovers committed by their offense. Where do we think this lands Saturday night? The line, we're going to set it at 1.5. Might feel low based on recent performances, but over under 1.5 turnovers forced by the Pitt defense on Saturday night. David?
It is about as easy a sportsbook pick as I think you're going to come across. You got to hammer that over. Pitt picked off one of the better performing, up until that point at least, quarterbacks in the country 5 times. SMU has 9 turnovers between their last 2 games. Pitt's defense is playing unbelievable ball. The linebacking core is a group of hawks or sharks, if you will. I think they're going to get home. They're going to send blitzes. They're going to chase after some errant passes, and we're going to get at least 2 turnovers on Saturday.
The reason why I'm hesitant to take the over is because it was so bad for SMU on Saturday night. Like, I think they fumbled once or twice and recovered it themselves. So there were probably close to 10 turnover worthy plays, which is absurd. That'll be such a big point of emphasis because they were so bad at it and Pitt was so good at it last week. So they might be eliminating any chance for turnovers and maybe playing a little bit more conservatively this week and trying to just win by playing it the safer way. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Pitt at least gets 2, and we're going to need them.
I agree. We're going to need those turnovers. Part of me, it does slightly worry. Like, do these teams kind of regress to the mean a little bit with such extreme, like you said, with such extreme turnover numbers by SMU, extreme turnover numbers by Pitt? Like, is this just what the Pitt defense is now? They're a turnover machine, or is this going to come back and be a little more reasonable moving forward? I'm going to go over here as well because I think it's going to be a big emphasis for Pitt and Pat Narduzzi. I think, once again, the turnover hoop is going to need to get put to good use on Saturday if they're going to have a chance in this one. Maybe if the offense starts a little slower, it's a big turnover or forced fumble that needs to generate some of that momentum. So I'm going to go over as well. We're all going over. And I think we're all in agreement that Pitt needs to go over to come out of Dallas with a win. All right, next up, a battle between the 2 quarterbacks on this one. Squid, tell me, who has more total yards on Saturday night, Eli Holstein or Kevin Jennings?
It ain't going to be Kevin Jennings. We talked about for like 20 minutes how good this defense has been playing, and I don't think that stops, even though I think SMU has a pretty good defense, probably one of the top 2-3 offenses that we faced so far. But I think a big part of that's not going to be our defense. It'll be how many yards Eli Holstein gets in a big bounce back. Last week, Malik Murphy for Duke, he's been playing good, but he hasn't really lit the world on fire, like yardage-wise. He had his best game to date, 295 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, was only sacked once. So I think that there's a big opportunity in the passing game for this Pitt offense to get back on track.
David?
I was trying to think of ways I could make my answer different from Squid's, but I feel very similarly. I think another issue I think I've seen the last 2 weeks is that Holstein has gotten a little bit too addicted to taking off and running and hasn't exactly been picking the right spots some of the time. I think Pitt takes this extra day or 2 they have in between the game, and Cade Bell really sits down with Eli and split some hairs. Hey, you looked to run too quickly on this play and you missed this guy. You looked deep. too early on this play and missed this guy. And here's how we can clean it up. I think we used it to our advantage. And I think we have a version of Eli that is firing on all cylinders, throwing and running the ball on Saturday.
Can we go with another clean sweep here? I'm gonna play the other side of the coin here. I'm gonna go Jennings here. And here's my reasoning. Squid, you mentioned earlier that this SMU offense, they kind of thrive on the big plays. And I think we might see some of that Saturday night. I think Pitt might give up a couple long touchdowns in the pass game. And I think we might be looking at another game where Pitt has to grind it out, similar to I don't want to say it's going to look like the Cal game, but I don't know. The offense hasn't been clicking on all cylinders the last few weeks, so this might be another situation where Pitt has to go on the road and the defense has to bail them out again. So for this one, I'm going to go with Jennings. I need Holstein to prove it to me. Hopefully, I'm just mushing Holstein back into being the Heisman candidate he was the first few weeks of the season. Sometimes that's the role I have to play on this show. So give me Jennings on this one, but praying that I'm wrong.
Very self-aware. Very nice of you.
Hey, everyone has to do their part. I'm just doing my job. All right. Beers actually drank by our buddy Lejeune by kickoff. Now, remember, this is an 8 p.m. kickoff. Knowing Junior, he's going to want to get started early. There's a big noon kickoff that he'll be tapped into. So he'll have a good at least 8 hours before the Panthers kick off. Now, we're going to go with beers actually drank. We know he'll claim several more than he'll actually put down, but we're going to say 20 and a half.
Do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I'll take this one. I'm going to take the over. I think he's ready to go. I think he's getting nervous a little early in the week, so he's going to have to calm his nerves. Now, a big variable here is can people keep him in the house Friday evening after work? If he gets out to happy hour, goes out, gets a nice dinner, and then those icy lights start going down a little too easy. It could be a slow start for him Saturday morning. He might not crack that first one until after the 12 p.m. slate's over. So you got to hope that he stays in, but I think he's disciplined. I think he goes over. I think he claims about 38. But for the actual number, I think he gets over that 20 and a half.
The key word you said there is discipline. And you think that he is disciplined? I do not. That's why I think it's a good line. I think if you had a guarantee he'd be in a bar stool by noon for that Penn State-Ohio State game, I think it's an easy over. And I think it's an even easier over if they have Icy Light Mango at the bar. I think that'd be an
right. That's only 3.8%. Those go down like water.
Basically cheating, yeah.
But still, there's no stipulation on that. If mangoes were on tap, I'd be giving them 30 and a half. But I'm worried about him Friday night. I think he'll have a few too many, and he'll moan and groan a little bit in the morning, and he won't get started until 3 o'clock, and then by then it's too little too late. I think he gets like a healthy 18 in him by then ramps it up for the Pitt game, but I think that slow start could hurt him, so I'm going to go under.
Some really valid points made on both ends, but I'm going to go out on a limb here. Not only am I taking the under, I think we could be looking at a like a 0-4 performance.
Alternate line.
I'm taking the alternate under. Like if you give me 5.5, I'd be going under. Because if we have a big bad Friday night, that's going to result in being up at 5 a.m. listening to Pearl Jam at somebody's apartment. That's going to result in like a 1 p.m. wake up and just a day of sitting in the sunroom, multiple $80 DoorDash orders,
Couple Adrian's pizzas coming in hot.
Couple Adrian's pizzas, and once the harassment starts to mount from the fellas, leaving the Pitt GM. So my money is on him not making it out. And so I think that's we're far from 20.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think you guys all but sealed your fate with that little rant there. He's gonna have something to prove now. I'd take an alternate over at this point. I believe in him. And
Dylan, if I were you, I'd hammer the over, but also like sprinkle a over $55 worth of McDonald's order just in case he decides to stay in and you have that in your back pocket to cash.
I'll have to see if I can find that somewhere in the sports book. See if they're offering that this weekend.
If I could sprinkle a little bit of like $10 to win 150 at under 5 and like $20 to win 120 like over 35, that's probably my play.
Nowhere in between.
Shout out to everyone that just listened to us use a 5-minute segment to talk shit to our buddy.
Hey, that's the type of content they come here for.
Yeah.
And then there's like a dozen people listening for the first time. Like, what the hell is this? Why did my coworker recommend this to me?
What's a Juner?
All right, let's wrap this up because it's getting late. Steelers are coming on in about an hour. I'm going to want to watch that on my couch. Over under 59 points. This is actually where Vegas has the over under as of when we started recording tonight. So over under 59 points. It's going to be a shootout. Are we going to hit that number? Fellas, what do we think?
Do we just want to combine all of like our score prediction?
Yeah, let's do everything
here because I want to jump on this score.
All right. Well, do you want to knock out first touchdown score first then?
Good call.
Okay. First touchdown score. Anyone want the honors? All right. I'll do it. I'll take Des Reed. He's going to hit some point here.
Oh, what a sacrifice you made going first to take the clear and obvious answer.
I don't know. Is the defense the clear and obvious answer right now?
I served it up on a silver platter. No one stepped up. I took him. Des Reed.
I'll take Eli Holstein.
Wow.
I'm going to go Gavin Bartholomew because Mr. Bartholomew stopped by the tailgate the other day and gave us shit for not taking him. Except for Squid, it was you that took him last week, right?
Mm-hmm. Shout out to Mr. Bartholomew. He said he liked my pick of picking Gavin first, but he also said he thinks that was going to be a game that Pitt got some turnovers, and boy, was he right.
Nose ball. Ball nowhere, Bartholomew. All right. Over under 59 points. Pitt plus 7.5. Those are where the lines sit as of today, and then give us a score prediction as well, so we can knock this all out with our predictions. Before we give the predictions, 7.5 lines kind of been giving us fits. It was the early line was sitting at 6.5, I think, before the Syracuse game, and we were already a little like, like obviously, like we just dominate Syracuse. That line's got to come down a couple points, but hasn't. It's been going in the other direction. So a little bit of cause for concern. Vegas typically knows best, but also they had a undefeated BYU as 3.5-point dogs to UCF last week. So we saw how that played out. Vegas can't shoot 100% from the field. And Pitt's 6-1 against the spread this year for reference. So Vegas hasn't really thought very fondly of Pitt all season. So I don't know. Any other input on that before we give our prediction?
I'm just gonna chalk that up to a bunch of rich oil tycoon men just hammering SMU, and it keeps moving that way.
The SMU alumni, they're just
Yeah.
biggest home game in years. They're just laying a hammer.
I
Good
can't for
theory.
the life of me figure out where they see 7.5 points in this game.
Yeah. It's a little unnerving, but
What do they know? What are they up to?
Hey, they might be closing down another casino after this one. Who knows? All right. Anyone want the honors going first here?
I would like the honors.
All right, Squid, give it to us.
I'm going to go under. I think a combination of a questionable up and down SMU offense combined with a very highly performing Pitt defense makes this go under. So I'm going to say Pitt wins a close one. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have another cakewalk like we did last week. The offense might have some speed bumps of our own. So I'm going Pitt 27-24. Ben Sauls comes through again.
How sick would this be, though, if this was just like a no fusser?
Back-to-back no fuss wins. We are asking for a lot now.
Yeah, let's get a hold of ourselves. That would be.
I could never tempt fate to that degree. I'll also take the under. Pitt's defense has become the story. So I can't believe it that my confidence is coming from the defensive side of the ball right now, but the way they've looked the last 2 games has me feeling like we can suffocate anybody. So I'm going to go under on the points. Pitt is covering. Even if they lose, they're covering. I mean, 7.5 is just so disrespectful. Give me a final score. Pitt 24. SMU 20.
I think
Pitt climbs all the way up to number 17 in the college football rankings.
Love it.
I think both of you gave score predictions that went through my head. So we're all in the same range here. And I think we all went over last week. That over didn't hit. So, and if we all go under again this week, I mean, I think people might just need to start a hashtag fade the Suns because we're all on the same side. Probably not a great sign, but hey, we're going to do it again this week. I also think it's going to be more low scoring. I think this could be an ugly game, rock fight, the type that Narduzzi would love to win. Just a nasty battle down in Texas. Could be a slow start, getting the boys ready to go, late game, late kickoff. But I think the Pitt Panthers pull it off. So obviously I do think they cover, and I think they're going to win. Like I said, I think it's going to be low scoring. Give me 21-17 Panthers. Not going to be the prettiest game. Like you said, David, pollsters might move us up one spot because, well, I mean, neither team looked good in that one. And we're going to continue to be disrespected, but we're going to get to 8-0, continue this magical season. And the dream will live on. I think I want to step back at some point and just kind of appreciate how cool it is that Pitt is 7-0. Like, I think we've done a very good job of keeping each other honest. Like, all right, don't get too far ahead of ourselves here. But I think we also need to enjoy some of this too. Like, if I would have told you Pitt was 7-0 before the season at this point, imagine what you think you'd feel like. Probably better than you actually do right now.
I would feel like I won the lottery.
And for some reason, we haven't let ourselves feel any of that joy. So soak that in a little bit. The players, one game at a time, go 1-0 this week. But us, the fans, we can do some enjoying. But
I hope Narduzzi, who never pays attention to the spread, never pays attention to polls, never pays attention to networks. I hope he pays enough attention to feel deeply disrespected and conveys that messaging, projects that messaging onto the players.
Yeah, Narduzzi talks a good game, but there's just no doubt in my mind that he's been in their ears all week about how much no one respects them. And that's a good thing. I think a Pat Narduzzi team needs to play with a chip on their shoulder. This defense looks like a team who's been playing with a chip on their shoulder. I'm sure Eli Holstein's starting to hear some of the whispers that it was fool's gold the first half of the season. So hopefully this is a Pitt team that walks into Dallas with a big old chip on their shoulder and has something to prove. 8 p.m. Saturday night, ACC Network. We'll be tuned in. If you're making the trip down to Dallas, send us some pictures, some videos. Salute to you. Absolute heroes. Go down there, make some noise, make a difference. And most importantly, please win.
Please
win. Watch your 7-0 Panthers. Have a chance at 8-0. Thanks for tuning in. As always, appreciate all of you guys who listen to the show. Give us feedback. Send us tweets. Come up to us in the parking lot saying how you enjoy the show. Really do appreciate it. If you're listening, make sure you hit like on YouTube, subscribe wherever you listen. It helps us out. And as always, hail loyal Sons of Pittsburgh.